Hello.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
I feel real good because I didn't have any problems with my audio.
We'll see how my current setup works. I've got a slightly different pipeline in Audio Hijack, and we're going to see if it makes it better.
I wanted to see that. Sometimes you'll have to send it to me after the show.
Yeah, I will. I am hearing myself a little bit in my headphones. Let me fix that real quick.
Yeah. This is all pre-show, so.
Yeah, and it may be something that I just hear. I think I've got a loop somewhere.
Yeah. I hope my side's not too difficult this time. I have a slightly different setup this week because I'm still rearranging my office. But by the next time we record, I should have everything done along with a mic arm for my desk.
Nice.
Yeah.
What kind did you go with?
I don't remember. It was something that was relatively inexpensive on Amazon.
That's what I went with. I don't remember the brand either, but it was one of the least expensive that had a clamp for the edge of a table or desk.
Yes, I got one with the one that I got had a clamp for the edge of a table or a desk, and on the opposite side of the clamp, there was a place to hang headphones. It had a headphone hook.
It's kind of neat. That's something I don't have.
Oh, it's totally a gimmick. But it also came with a pop filter, and I made sure that the adapter it came with would work with the adapter that I have for my mic. So it should be relatively easy to use, just like plug and play.
I just realized I didn't pull up the handful of notes that I made. I need to do that real quick, too.
I was just thinking, the only thing that might be a problem is that my USB cord may not be long enough.
That's at least a relatively easy solution.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. If I can find a USB, so my mic has a proprietary connector. The newer versions of my mic have I think they now support, I think there's a USB-C model. I have the Apogee mic 96K. It's an old microphone. It might be about 10 years old now, but it does a good job. But it has a proprietary connector, and it came with two cables, proprietary connector on both sides, and on one side USB-A, and the other cable has Lightning. So it must not be 10 years old. It was after Lightning, because Lightning is definitely not 10 years old.
At this point, I don't even remember exactly when Lightning was introduced.
It might be 2013 or 2016.
That'll be follow-up for next week.
Well, I was just going to say, we can say that Lightning is going to exist for at least one more year, as of today.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about MagSafe, though.
I have mixed feelings about MagSafe.
Let's pause that. Let's go through the quick little bit of follow-up, and then we'll just delve into the event and see what kind of time we have afterwards.
All right. Oh, can I do some real-time follow-up?
Certainly.
It was actually 2012. The MagSafe was introduced with the iPhone 5. So that would have been September of 2012.
You mean Lightning?
Yeah. What did I say?
You said MagSafe.
Oh, yeah. That was introduced in 2006 with the MacBook Pro, the first MacBook portable to have Intel processors.
Well, the current iteration of MagSafe was introduced today in 2020.
I have feelings about that. But we should do follow-up first, and then my feelings.
All right. So the first thing that I had, I said I would go back and find the quote about politics being the art of the possible. And it was attributed to Otto von Bismarck, and the quote is specifically, "Politics is the art of the possible, the attainable, the art of the next best."
Nice. What else is Otto von Bismarck known for? Because I remember the name, but I don't remember the thing.
I know he's known for that quote.
All right. So, never-ending case of follow-up. I'm going to have a follow-up show where I've done all of the follow-up because I know I had follow-up from last week, and I don't have any. I don't have it now. It's going to have to wait.
So, quick real-time search. He was a prominent German statesman who masterminded the unification of Germany in 1871.
That sounds right.
That's assuming the Wikipedia article is correct.
I would expect so. That one doesn't seem like one that you'd see a lot of trolling with. I was going to say, that also sounds right, because the furthest I ever made it in world history was the beginning of World War I, and that was in a college Western Civilization History Part 2.
I actually don't have a response to that.
I mean, I feel like so many of my history books, they went all the way up to the Vietnam War, and we never made it past furthest I've gotten in history was World War One. Everything after World War One, I had to learn on my own.
Well, here's a spoiler. World War II also happened.
I heard about the sequel. I heard it was bigger and better and more bombs. There was a several hundred years old Japanese bonsai that survived the blast in Nagasaki.
I heard about that.
Yeah, it's still around. It's still growing. It is kind of amazing.
One of the other pieces of follow-up, we were talking about whether COVID was more prolific a killer than heart disease and cancer. I'm
going to go with yes.
Yeah, some quick searching didn't really yield a definitive answer, and by quick I meant I spent maybe a minute and a half looking, and there wasn't just a blatant headline saying yes or no. But the two links that I dropped in the show notes were from earlier in the year, and both showed it at number 3. So by now, entirely possible.
Yeah, I've seen some statistics showing it is now the number one killer of Americans over heart disease, which is typically the number one killer of Americans.
And then the other piece of follow-up that I had was the question on whether Alabama had been even semi-progressive and passed a medicinal marijuana bill. And they did, but they did not pass anything with details on timeline for implementation or anything. So medicinal marijuana is becoming legal in the state of Alabama, to be determined on how, what, etc. from, again, another maybe minute search on some headlines.
Oh, wow. I found out that all marijuana under 1 ounce has been decriminalized in the city of Birmingham. So if you get caught with less than 1 ounce, it's a $75 ticket.
Interesting. Some kind of an add-on to that. In the VP debate, did you see that Kamala, isn't that how you say her first name? Kamala Harris? Yeah.
It's Kamala, yes.
Actually made the statement that they were planning to decriminalize marijuana.
So if marijuana is decriminalized, what about all the criminals that are in our jail systems solely on marijuana possession charges? Do they get released?
The quick write-up that I saw stated that the plan would be to decriminalize and to expunge the records of anyone who was convicted solely on a criminal marijuana case. I don't know if that's an automatic felony or if it's tiered, but probably based on state.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good if it swings enough of the vote that we don't have to deal with another 4 years of Trump. I'm just hoping that anything can swing the vote enough at this point.
Yeah, we shall see. It's 3 weeks from today.
And those 3 weeks are going to feel like 3 years. The combination of 2020 and the potential outcomes.
Yes.
So that was it for the follow-up I had. And I know you said you didn't have the couple, but...
I have.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry. I do have follow-up. It's going to have to wait for the next show or another show in the future.
Yeah, there's nothing that states we have to do follow-up from the previous show, the show after. That's entirely our choice.
No, I feel like I want to have like a big old gift basket of follow-up at some point.
And we can let it build for 2 or 3 weeks and then just do a follow-up show.
Yep. Okay.
I do want to add one other piece of follow-up just from the text that you sent me before we started recording. I understand you have a new vehicle.
Yes, I Currently, before Sunday, my daily driver, my only vehicle, is a 1999 Toyota 4Runner. It's an SR5 model, which is their base model. I was always curious about what SR5 stood for, so I looked it up around the time that I got it, and it stands for Sport Rally 5. And I have since forgotten why it's a 5. Maybe that's more follow-up. Anyway, it had four-wheel drive, and then it had the Highlander package, which meant that it got the non-functional hood scoop and a few other, I think it had upgraded wheels and so forth, just cosmetic things. But I can't remember. Did I just say that it was four-wheel drive?
I honestly didn't catch if you did or didn't.
It doesn't matter. It's four-wheel drive, and that was important to me because I used to really enjoy driving on trails. I do that less so, but I still like four-wheel drive because some of the places I like to take my kayak just makes it nicer to not ever have to worry about getting stuck. Even though there's a common saying that four-wheel drive only gets you stuck deeper and farther in the trail. So, because of COVID, many things on the gray market have interesting prices. And based on a lot of the modifications that I made to my vehicle and upgrades I made, I think that I could get a very high price, or I could sell it at a high price. I saw a 2002 Toyota 4Runner, so it's just same generation as mine. It was the last year of that generation that sold for over $17,000. I thought that was wild.
That seems kind of ridiculous.
It sold on eBay for $17,000. It was on the market for less than a week. It was like a single list. Well, I don't know how many times it was listed, but it was on the listing that I saw was, I want to say it ended in the week. So, yeah, I think it had low mileage. It had mileage around 100,000. So, and just looking in Birmingham, I just had been watching the market in Birmingham, and I saw an early 2000 first generation Tundra. It might have been like a 2003 or 2004, and it was on the market. I use it as a point of reference because it's similar in the same vein. It goes for the same sort of price as my 4Runner, and it sold maybe in 48 hours for $7,000 with over 200,000 miles. So I had the idea of strike while the iron's hot. And so I also saw a 2008 4Runner with a V8, which is probably the best or second best engine Toyota's ever made. I saw it for a great price, and so I snatched it up. And now I've got 30 days to sell my 4Runner so that I don't have to pay extra insurance.
You couldn't just cancel the insurance on yours and have it parked?
I could, but I've got 30 days where I don't have to do anything. Basically, my insurance is going to cover both vehicles for the next 30 days. And if I do it within 30 days, I don't have to go in and update any paperwork like I'm owning two vehicles.
Okay, I follow.
I mean, I guess at the end of the 30 days, I could cancel the insurance, but I'd hate for somebody to test drive it and then wreck it. And, just that's the worst case scenario. But I think it's good in my head, it's going to be good motivation to get the vehicle sold in the next 30 days.
Yeah, based on everything that I've heard, it sounds like you've got a pretty good market for it.
I think so. I have been watching this market for over a year because last summer I considered options in buying a new vehicle because the head gasket in the engine of my old 4Runner blew. Like I had a head gasket break on the third cylinder, and it turned out to be the least expensive fix turned out to be replacing the entire block. So I did that, and so I actually got a fairly young block with low mileage, something that had less than 65,000 miles. So I think that's going to really get the price of this vehicle up because the block is fairly new.
At this point, I can only hope that the Jeep Grand Cherokee and Cherokee hold their value like the Toyotas.
Yeah. Every time I see Jeeps, I think of you.
It is nice that we have both the Grand Cherokee is a phenomenal road trip vehicle, and having Emily's Cherokee with the four-wheel drive gives me the best of both worlds because I can just pick which vehicle I want for the use case.
Yeah, that's very cool. I got really excited because the Forerunner one of the reasons I really wanted to get this Forerunner is because it's the only generation Forerunner that they put a V8 in. And I think they took the V8 out of it with the 5th generation because it was cannibalizing Land Cruiser sales.
I could see that, especially since I feel like they're relatively close in size anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was something that I'm having to get used to. Is I think the first Forerunner I had was a subcompact SUV, and now the one I do have is midsize SUV. So I think it's about the size of your Grand Cherokee.
You know, something that's kind of interesting, the Cherokee is typically, I guess it's, I actually don't know what they classify it as, but if you get the Trailhawk package, so if you get a Cherokee that's decked out like Emily's, it's not that much smaller than my Grand Cherokee. It's definitely narrower, but height-wise, it's almost the same. It's just a little bit lower to the ground, but it's the same size wheels and the same clearance. So I can only imagine what that means if you get the Trailhawk package on the Grand Cherokee, how much that increases, ground clearance and overall size.
Yeah, I think I actually lost, 9/10 of an inch in ground clearance or 1.1 inches. I can't remember. I was looking at this the other day, so I feel like I'm just creating a whole bunch of feedback for myself right now.
That's all right. Well, why don't we go ahead and delve into the event? Because I know that's what's forefront on both of our minds anyway at this point.
Yes, the salad has been eaten. It is time to start cutting into the steak.
So I'm going to start with the most anticipated, which is the HomePod Mini.
I was looking forward to the HomePod Mini. I really was. I was also looking forward to, like an Apple TV HDMI stick, but that didn't happen. Thoughts on the HomePod Mini?
I'm intrigued. I find it fits the price point that I would consider it, because I've got in the office area with the spare TV, I've got just a Sony soundbar that's hooked up that works fine. Like I certainly have no complaints about the setup, but the only thing I use in there with the particular TV is an Apple TV. And so if I could replace the soundbar with a stereo pair of the HomePod Minis, I'm curious what that would be like. My biggest question about that, though, is whether I really want a smart assistant device in the house. That's still been something that I have resisted in general because of the proclivity of a young human figuring out that he can control things with his voice.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure I'm ready to introduce that.
Yeah, I understand that. And one of the things that it's been said by others that the longevity of such a device is questionable. I know lots of folks will have like a pair of loudspeakers for decades and decades, and it's just unclear what the longevity of an assisted, a software assisted speaker, how long that would last. It changes the device from being just a speaker. Like before with like any sort of Bluetooth device, if for some reason the Bluetooth portion of it stops working, you've got an auxiliary port and you just use it as speaker. It just becomes slightly less convenient.
Well, it's like in the living room, I wouldn't even consider one. I've got a pretty nice setup with a receiver and multiple JBL Pro speakers that even if the audio quality could emulate what I have, I mean, those speakers are going on probably a decade now and they sound phenomenal.
Right.
So I just have no reason to consider replacing them.
Right. And even if you were starting out brand new, this is probably not the direction you would go.
Yeah, until I could provide other inputs to it, it kind of misses the mark on the living room for me. If my only method of consumption of any type of media was an Apple device, then I might be able to make the case for a stereo pair of like the HomePods. However, the ability to use the seamlessness that has been advertised of, placing 2 or 3 of those around the house and being able to move room to room and it sound good, I see the benefit for sure. And I like the idea. I just don't think I'm actually the use case for it, because typically if I'm listening to something like that, I'm not going room to room.
Yes. I think that a lot of the use case is very idealistic, aspirational. But the thing that's got me the most interested about it, at least with the original HomePod, is that when paired, all accounts have stated that the audio quality is quite good for such small speakers. And so I find that really interesting. And the smart tuning of the speaker based on where it is in the room in conjunction with as it being a solitary device or paired with another HomePod, I find interesting. So after reviews of the Mini coming out, I may consider one for my kitchen, because that's a place where where I do a lot of things. It'd be kind of cool to have music in there or listen to podcasts and just, tell Siri to do that. As opposed to just setting up a Bluetooth speaker in there and playing from my phone.
That is kind of why I'm considering the Mini for the office, because it's an area that I'm spending a lot more time than I used to with the working from home aspect. And if it can provide a richer, fuller sound as opposed to the soundbar that I have in there, I'm really interested. The biggest thing is it's something that I'm going to have to hear firsthand to see exactly how well it performs. I mean, sure, I could probably just order a couple and then, return them if they don't, but...
I was just going to say, yeah, Apple has a nice liberal return policy.
And my concern there is really just, do I want to go through the headache of setting it up and then being blown away and feeling like I have to order 3 or 4 more for other use cases?
All right, so let's talk about iPhones.
So I figure you're probably going to order the iPhone 12 mini, correct?
Negative. Takes too long to get here.
I laugh a little bit about it. The mini really caught my eye at first because I love the thought of going back to a smaller form factor for a lot of reasons. And when I first saw the introduction video with the colors, I thought the blue looked okay. It didn't really blow me away, but I liked it. And I thought, as long as there's nothing that I feel I have to have out of the Pro, I might actually legitimately go the mini route.
I had the exact same thought, and I think I even sent you some links to the iPhone. It was a way to show what the mini would look like to scale relative to your current phone. Did you see that?
I did.
I thought it was a really clever way of being able to picture that, and I remember putting that image on my phone, and I was like, "Oh, I could totally do this. I could totally do this." And I had the exact same thought. If there's nothing in the Pro that is compelling, I will get the iPhone mini.
So the funny thing is, as soon as they announced a couple of things on the Pro, it's like, yeah, no, I'm done. The Pro is what I have to get. So we'll get to that. But I want to talk a little more about the non-Pro versions first, because I really do think it's a compelling version to get if you're not interested in the specific improvements to photography and videography. Yeah,
well, I like how John Gruber has mentioned it. The iPhone, well, this was in reference to the iPhone 11. So the iPhone 11, and this will go for the 12, is for everybody. That is the iPhone that is meant to be sold to everybody. And then Pro, in Apple's parlance, means deluxe. And the iPhone Deluxe is for the enthusiast and the nerd and so forth.
Yeah, I think with the 12, we have to add a caveat to that. The Pro certainly fits that bill. and the Pro Max is for the one who can't give up any little technical detail and gets pissed off that they can't use a larger phone. We'll come back to that because I have a deep-seated hatred of the differences between the Pro Max and the Pro.
I don't have that hatred, but I understand it. I can empathize.
So the 12 line in general really is a phenomenal upgrade over the 11. I know it doesn't necessarily look that way on paper, but if you think about the capabilities of what they're talking about with the camera systems and just the sheer compute power, even a 5% difference is pretty significant, something that you would see day to day. You combine that with a form factor that is back to being something good and not this rounded corner bullshit that we've had to deal with for a while. And there's really not a reason to not consider the 12 non-pro models as a very legitimate upgrade for any user, whether you're running an 11 or 11 Pro or a previous model. I think that the more interesting story, though, is actually more simplistic. The colors look really good for a change.
Yeah. I think that Apple's finally getting to a place where it's okay for us to be colorful. And it's kind of crazy to say that about Apple because the original iMac put a splash of color in a marketplace where there was no color. Like, it was pretty much devoid of color. It was like, they say taupe is smoothing, but that beige that you saw in typical computers was very...
It did not age well.
I don't think it even started well.
That's fair.
Because it's like looking at some of the computers from the mid to late 70s, like and precursors to actual PCs. They had, they were different. There was some blue, there's some gray. I think even some of the Commodores were black. But at some point, by the 80s, everything was this sort of beige color, and I don't know. Actually, it'd be kind of interesting to know why computers were that color for so long. And it wasn't until the late 90s when Apple released the iMac that computers got this bold new look. And some might say that Apple took it a little too far with the Flower Power iMac and the Dalmatian iMac, but they were whimsical. I know someone who owned a Flower Power iMac because that's what his wife wanted. So it was really cool. And I think the PowerBook was black back then, and then it went to the titanium, and then everything followed that as in their portable line, eventually going to this nice neutral gray shiny aluminum or anodized aluminum. Anyway. It's nice to see colors back. The iPods had colors for a while. I can remember nanochromatic that was the iPod. I think that was a second generation iPod Nano.
It's kind of funny that you mentioned the titanium PowerBook.
Nope, fourth. Yeah.
So my first Mac was a titanium PowerBook, the G4, and the entire reason I was sold on it was the fact that it was titanium and it had this look to it that was just different than anything I had ever seen. And prior to that, I used a Toshiba Satellite, which was that typical gray, just nondescript PC.
Mm-hmm.
And
I had a Satellite for a while.
Yeah, it was a great computer for what I needed it for. And then the TiBook came out, and honestly, I didn't really know much of anything about the OS. This was... I don't remember if it was 99 or 2000. It was right at the introduction of OS 10. And so I was booting back and forth between 9.2 and 10.
It might have been 2001.
Maybe. It's something I'll go back and verify kind of if I have anything that tells me when I bought it. And I had used Macs previously, as far as the availability in school labs and things of that nature. But with the TiBook, the biggest thing I was drawn to was the design and the fact that I could get a computer made out of titanium. I mean, really, who would not find that appealing?
Oh, it was awesome. I remember the company I worked for at the time. I quickly looked it up. It came out in January of 2001. It was the PowerBook 3,2, and I don't think OS 10 came out until later that year. I think there was like a beta version that you could get. Anyway, the company I worked for was my first time using Macs, and the owner of the company had a PowerBook G4 Titanium, and I just remember like when I got to set one of my responsibilities at that job was setting up new computers and making sure virus definitions were up to date and installing software, so on and so forth. Just normal stuff that it's pretty easy to do if like you have any sort of understanding of computers. And so I just remember loving getting a chance to use his PowerBook. It was great. I mean, I thought it was just so crazy. It would sit in his office on the desk. He wouldn't use it when he was in the office because he would use his desktop. He had a Power Mac G3 and that PowerBook. And I was just like, oh, I would always use that PowerBook.
So I do know when I bought mine, OS 10 was not actually available, I don't think. I know it came with 9.2. I'll have to go back and look and see. It may have been 2001. I'll take that as follow-up and see if I can't narrow it down a little bit better.
So I was going to say, I remember that really well because it was my first time using it, and I was installing all of the software on people's computers. Because I remember when, I got this job, I started this job in January of 2001, and I remember one of the first things I had to do was upgrade. macOS 9.1 had just come out, and I had to upgrade everybody's computer to 9.1. This company was they were so good about, for a small business, they were 100% legit on all their licensing. And I thought it was quite impeccable because this was in the early 2000s when pirating was pretty easy to do.
Well, and I've worked for a number of companies that were decently sized that would do everything they could to skimp on licensing.
Yeah, the world has changed. So macOS 9.2 was released in June of 2001.
All right, so it sounds like 2001 is the most likely candidate, and I'll see what I can find on records.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're itching to talk about it, so what really caught your eye out of the iPhone 12 lineup?
I would be amiss to not say the camera, because the camera was on the iPhone 12 Pro and Pro Max is stellar. Apple says, well, it's not just Apple says, but they do put the best camera they've ever had in whatever iPhone they're releasing because they're always making advancements to the camera. And the camera's really good. I think even that, I've had, in recent years, I've had an iPhone 7, an iPhone 10, an iPhone 10s, and an iPhone 11. And I preferred the iPhone 10 and the 10s. I never got the 11 Pro, which has a better camera than the 11, but the 11 had a really good camera. And my girlfriend, who has a Pixel, just goes on and on every time she sees a picture from my phone. Maybe not on and on, but she makes comments about the quality of the pictures. And so I feel like the camera in the iPhone 12 Pro is significantly more advanced than any other camera they've put in there. I understand, when you go to their website that, there's a dozen pictures from the camera on the phone showing off all the quality that camera can do.
Well, I will say the big thing that I'm really looking forward to is the Pro RAW format from Apple. Having the ability to take a picture from the phone and have all of the enhancements, I guess, the computational photography aspect, available as actually separate items that are applied to the photo and not something that I have to use the final edited photo to be able to access. Like that makes me extremely excited as a photo geek.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I was going to say, I should actually let you talk about the camera more, because as a photo geek, you're going to be able to articulate it a little bit better. Like for me, it's like, oh, I know that I'm going to get some excellent pictures just taking a picture, using it as a point and shoot. And beyond that, there's a lot more to it than that. But even, I think the video is going to be really awesome as well.
And I mean, let's put this in perspective as well, real quick. The iPhone 12 Pro, and I actually don't know how much of it applies to the 12 lineup versus the Pro lineup. So I'm going to just add the caveat that I'm speaking about the 12 Pro for sure, and question mark on the other models. But the fact that you have a device that fits in your pocket that can handle recording and editing Dolby Vision HDR content in 4K at 60 frames per second in real time is ridiculous. I mean, the sheer computational power available to the 12 Pro is insane when it comes to photo and video creation. And you add to that something as simple as, quote unquote simple, you add to that something as simple as the new RAW format, where instead of having just an end product JPEG, you have instead every iteration of what's applied to it, to a photo in real time without shutter lag, that you can import into another application or edit within Apple's own Photos app. I mean, the fact that they're able to make that kind of jump from year to year is just mind-boggling. There's not a better word for it. And I can only imagine, like I haven't done a lot with video in years. It is how I got my start. And then I moved to photo work just because I didn't have to worry about a crew. At that point, I could just do it all myself. But the fact that even a decade ago, dealing with high-quality video and render times and being able to see or apply effects or filters or whatever to whatever you captured took, minutes at best, an hour or so at worst, depending on what type of computer you were using. The fact that you can do it all with a device that you slip in your pocket is, it's just phenomenal.
It is. It really is. And you kind of beat me to what I was going to ask you. I was going to say, what if you could tell yourself right after you bought that Titanium PowerBook that you would be able to do that? You'd be amazed, because I know you got your start in video, and that was VHS days, right?
Well, it was for primary method of consumption. I was more on the kind of bleeding edge with the adoption of.
Did you have
micro DV? I think it was.
Oh, mini DV.
Mini DV.
Yeah, I was about to ask you had mini DV? Wow.
I did. I had a Canon XL2, which at the time was a $4,000 over-the-shoulder camera. And the fact that a device that fits in my pocket shoots video, 100 times better and can apply effects and do different things to the final product in HDR, it's just like it's really difficult to pause and wrap my head around how far we've come in. I guess it's been about 15 years, a little over a decade and a half.
Yeah, I can remember a little over like in the late 90s, and I can remember using my dad's camcorder, and like my dad did not spend a lot of money. He was one of the most frugal people I know. But when he did buy something, he was like, I want the best. And so in the mid-90s, I remember going with him. The whole family went to Circuit City so that he could buy a camcorder. And he bought a JVC handheld camcorder. It was like one the form factor was really interesting. It was one that was held like a portable audio recorder. So it was like you held it. You have basically a candy bar shape, or it's quite a bit bigger than a candy bar, but it was held vertically, like a rectangle that you hold vertically, and it had a flip out LCD panel. Maybe it's probably the aspect ratio is probably 4:3 because the videos were being recorded as 4:3 video, and it had maybe like a 2.5-inch diagonal. It was a really small video, but we got the camcorder, recorded things. It's digital. Like, he let me use it when I was in high school. I recorded a bunch of stuff with my friends, just goofing off. It was a lot of fun. And I didn't know anything about anything. And I was like, gotta get this over onto VHS, and saved everything. I thought I was like doing myself a favor by saving everything on VHS. I lost all of the digital recordings.
Yeah, I remember my workflow when I had that Canon. I actually would author a DVD, and it felt like a big thing at the time because it wasn't something that most people did. And I was using DVD Studio Pro, which is a former Apple application.
Yeah, like even well into the 2000s, like DVDs went away before people were putting things on DVDs. Like, as DVD was in decline, and I guess Blu-ray was ascending, people still weren't putting things on DVD because it was kind of this middle period where videos were just on a computer, or I think what happens is it turns out video editing takes more work than most people are willing to put in.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of the reasons also that I kind of shifted away from that for a while and have rediscovered it recently, because now we're at a point where I could spend, an hour and a half putting together some combination of clips video-wise that previously would have taken me very easily a couple of days of dedicated time, if not longer. And I can apply effects or color grading or different things to the video to make it look more uniform without any weight. I don't have to apply some settings and then let it render and then see what the effect is. I can just apply settings and then watch a preview of it in real time. And that makes a huge difference when it comes to being willing to take the time to create a project that is just a hobby, just something that you're creating for yourself that you're not sharing with the world.
Yeah.
Whereas photos, even though for the most part we've been able to do it real time for a while, photos are much easier to share with the world because of, the native attention span of humans. And the web makes a great distribution method for combinations of photos, even if you have relatively lackluster internet service in the middle of nowhere. And video is a lot tougher to share still. And we're getting to that point where I think you're going to see, we've already seen an explosion of amateur video that by far dwarfs what thought possible, 5-10 years ago.
Yeah.
But I think we're at the cusp of another evolution of that, where you have people that are going to be able to capture and edit really high quality HDR 4K content, and they're just going to see what can happen, and they're going to share it with everybody that they can reach. And it's interesting because to me the new phone, the 12 Pro, really marks that point where to me it looks like an evolution in what you're going to see from amateur content creators, and you're going to start to see some really professional level results just because people have access to tools that, prior to this year, just were not easily accessible en masse.
Yes, I think, you would see, I think the folks that were putting out professional level video from their phone, I think that existed, but it was like professional level from professional standards from a few years ago. And I think this leap is putting it closer to professional standards that are currently being delivered by a studio. I think the casual user is going to continue to make the same kind of videos. I feel like for example, TikTok is full of casual videos, and they're fun, and the feature set that comes with that application has more to do with creating a certain type of video rather than making a high quality video. And I think for the casual user, that's going to remain the same. And I feel like if I'm still having to tell folks, turn your phone sideways when you record a video, that the casual video maker is going to worry more about is concerned more about content than I don't want to say quality, but the technical aspect of video editing or video production.
So that brings us into an interesting discussion. I am by all means an purist when it comes to turn your damn phone sideways if you're going to record video. But at the same time, I also acknowledge that the primary primary method of consumption is not the TV anymore. And so what does that actually look like if you're trying to generate immersive, high-quality content? Do you deal with the quote-unquote proper distribution method of other screens? Or if your audience is almost entirely composed of people who are watching on mobile devices, do you create content that is geared toward those devices? At which point, portrait is acceptable.
I think actually a portrait is actually preferred for content that's created for that method of consumption. Certain things that actually, let me before I say certain things, the thing that I find most offensive is the square. Either it is something that was recorded in portrait, and they put something along the sign, so it's a square. So even if you turn your phone in landscape mode, it's still about the same size. And the worst version of the square is something that was recorded in landscape mode, and they put top and bottom bars either to add text or to make it fit a screen a certain way. I see this on social media a lot. I find that incredibly offensive. Give me one or the other. I want to see landscape. Anything that is meant to be watched on a large screen, like a television, should be landscape. Anything that's meant to be consumed on a phone, I'm totally okay with seeing video in portrait. It's just pick one or the other, based on where your viewers are going to be viewing your content. But this bullshit with the square, I do not like.
I can agree with that. And I think part of that might also be the just difference in platforms. I don't know for sure what type of creative control or what type of control in general you have in recording aspect ratios on like Android devices, for example, versus the iPhone. And certainly you should be able to create something that mimics full screen in portrait mode on the Android devices. I just don't know for sure what those options are. And so I do wonder sometimes if it's not just platform to platform inconsistency.
No, it's not that. What I'm talking about is specifically video that was taken, and it is shot, the video is recorded in a ratio that you would expect to use either in portrait or landscape, and it has information's been added to it. Like it could be an advertisement to show so that you're seeing what's being advertised the entire time, instead of it being an overlay on the video that you're watching. More video, you could say, that it's not that the aspect ratio of the video has been changed. Let me try to say this right. The video itself is a square or close to a rectangle that's close to a square. And the actual recording is usually 16 by 9. And what's happened is they've added pixels to the top and the bottom of that so that you end up with a square or something that's close to a square. And those pixels are filled with information like either text or graphics to show either what this advertisement is for. Sometimes it is subtitles, but not subtitles like you would expect on a 16 by 9 video. It's just, I find it so offensive. The next time I see one, I'll forward it your way so that you can know what I'm talking about.
I think I have a mental picture of what you're talking about. the proliferation of video in Instagram, I think, is a strong contributor to that issue.
Yeah, because everything is a square on Instagram, but Instagram does have a feature where you can put in 16:9 video and it looks fine there. Anyway.
Yeah, we've kind of diverged pretty far from the event.
Yes, I can see over that hill that we were talking about the iPhone.
We were. Should we kind of get into some details on what makes you most excited for I assume the 12 Pro in the blue color is what really caught your eye.
It really did. And I had an iPhone 11 and I didn't like how big it was. Going from an iPhone 10 to an iPhone 11 was it was just big enough that I didn't like it. And I remember wanting to go back to the iPhone 10. So I went down to an iPhone 10s. But that's a whole other thing involving a river. So when I heard rumors that the iPhone 12 Pro was going to have the same display size, the 6.1 inch display size that the 11 has and the 10R, I was like, ooh. And that's what got me thinking about the 12 mini. And when I saw that it was the same physical dimensions because of the new form factor, I was like, oh.
Close to the same.
It's actually, yeah, in some ways, I think it's slightly smaller. I think it's like a little bit thinner, but a little bit taller, but the same width. Is that right?
I think that's right. I think it's 0.01 inches thinner or narrower.
For all intents and purposes, it's going to feel the same.
Yeah, it'll be noticeably taller, and the width should feel basically identical.
I was like, okay, 12 Pro. That's where I'm going to go. Much better camera than the 10S that I'm using. It's got pretty color. It's got a great display. Pretty excited about it.
And so I have the 11 Pro, and I've already gone ahead through the process to be ready to pre-order the 12 Pro on the upgrade program.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go with the 256 gig 12 Pro in Pacific Blue.
I think I'll do a 128. I currently have a 64 gig 10S, and I'm really not feeling that. Not feeling the hurt on that at all.
Yeah, I currently have a 256 gig 11 Pro, and I'm just under the halfway mark, so I figure the 256 is definitely the size that I need to go with.
I think that makes sense.
And especially with the updated camera system, I'm going to be playing with it a bit more. So I guess kind of a comparison there. I recently upgraded my primary camera to Canon, the EOS R, the first mirrorless camera that they've offered with a full frame sensor. And I'm really curious how images compare between the two, especially with the introduction of the RAW format later this year. Like I can't wait to get to a point where I can replace my primary camera with the phone. And I'm still not there with the 11 Pro. I can get some great photos. I'm not saying that it's not a very capable camera, but it is not something that I have been able to use and leverage to be comparative to what I can get out of my primary camera. And so I really want to see what the format and the camera improvements offer to compare to the new mirrorless camera, new being about a year old now. But the move from a full frame DSLR to a mirrorless full frame camera was already significant from a size weight perspective kind of thing. I can carry a lot more in a single day and not compromise what I can get. If I can slim that down to the point where like the mirrorless camera becomes a backup that just sits in the vehicle and my primary camera is my phone, like that type of world seems alien but extremely exciting.
Yeah. Quick question. Did you have that camera when you went to Ireland?
I did.
Just want to know if what I was looking at is from that camera.
Yes, that was the first big trip that I took with that camera, and I took my 7D as a backup camera, which was why my bag weighed over 30 pounds.
Outside, yeah. I was going to say, outside of the new camera on the 12 Pro, were there any other features that you found really interesting?
I'm very interested in MagSafe and what it means for the world of accessories.
Me too.
The simple matter of accurate placement for charging, sure, that's great. I have no complaints against that. I'm more excited, though, about the possibility of a nice, slim, minimalist magnetic mount that I can put in the Jeep and not have to worry about this large, cumbersome, pain-in-the-ass thing from Anker that... I shouldn't say pain in the ass. It's a great, mount and works well. It's just bulkier and larger and more obtrusive than I would like.
That is almost exactly what I was interested in, is like, oh, I'm going to be one of those people. Because, neither of us are case people. And now I get to be one of those people that can use a magnetic mount in my car. Like, that was really exciting for me. And so that was pretty cool. But I do have some... my feelings are a little bit hurt because it is called MagSafe. And of course it's going to be called MagSafe because that's a great name. It's a name that they've used before. It's a throwback to, MacBook Pros that had a connector that was magnetically attached, which was one of the coolest things about the Intel iteration of the Apple portables. And it was just like, it went away a few years ago, and I felt like that was a very sad thing. I understand why it went away. It's very cool that I can plug my computer in any of the 4 ports that are available, but I miss MagSafe. I thought that was such a clever solution to a real problem that shouldn't exist.
And the removal of it reintroduces a very real problem on the newer USB-C style MacBooks. MacBook Pros.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've had to fumble with being able to just line up the cable to plug it in.
Oh, I'm like the bigger concern is like somebody tripping over your cord and damaging one of the ports, which is gonna necessitate. I can't remember. I haven't seen the inside. I don't know if there's an I/O board, but presumably one side of those USB-C ports is soldered directly to the logic board. Maybe both. I don't know.
Yeah, in fairness, I would say that's probably the larger concern for most people. My use cases, it's not. My cable management typically tends to negate that. But just the ability to easily line up the charger and not feel like I'm scratching the case as I try to find exactly where to line up the USB connector, I miss that quite a bit.
Yeah, I do. It was such a cool thing. But those those MagSafe connector ports on the computer itself, they got weirdly dirty. I remember looking at those and thinking it's weird the kind of dirt that I would see in there.
Well, it was more like lint buildup than it was just dirt.
Yeah, it was like lint that got smashed and compressed over time onto the connector. It was nice because it was just the magnetic part that it was smashed on. It didn't actually damage. It was never. I never really saw it in the on the actual charging pins, but it was just around the charging pins where the magnet connected. Anyway, MagSafe was such a cool solution to the problem of somebody tripping over your cord. But a better solution to that is all-day battery life in a portable. That would be great. That would be, I just charge it when I go to bed or something, and then you don't have that problem anymore. And maybe we'll see that with Apple Silicon in their notebooks.
I think there's certainly a good chance that we're going to see massive improvements on battery life with Apple Silicon. My big concern there is whether the trade-off would be appropriate between performance and battery life, or if they're going to have to sacrifice battery life more than they really would like in order to match current levels of performance in non-Apple Silicon Macs.
Looking at the iPad Pro, that's a bigger battery than the iPhone. The iPhone battery management has gotten really good. Like for a few years, I haven't really had to worry about, is my battery going to make it all day? I think there's been once in the past, as far as I can remember, where I was like, I'm worried about my battery. And it was because I had been talking on the phone for a few hours and neglected to bring a cable to charge my phone. But it had all to do with like running my battery down and then not providing myself with a way to charge it. And so it was just bad management on my part, but I normally don't experience that anymore. And I remember when that was a normal occurrence. Is my battery going to make it to the next time I can conveniently charge? And the iPad Pro has so much power in many scenarios can outperform a lot of the high-end Macs, and it's got what I would expect to be a smaller battery than the next Apple, maybe like a MacBook Air. And so I feel like we'll see an Apple Silicon Mac that it will be very powerful, but be in a small form factor, like the MacBook with the single USB connector. And I think we'll see a form factor like that, but without the sacrifice in performance that computer had. I think we'll see a beefy MacBook Pro. It'll probably be in the same size as the current MacBook Pro, the 16-inch MacBook Pro. But it'll be very powerful with long battery life and something in between in the MacBook Air range. That's what I'm expecting to see.
It would certainly be helpful. I had to look real quick just to kind of get a feel for normal day-to-day. I'm currently at about 47% remaining on the battery on my 11 Pro. And I'm not by any means a light user of the phone. And the only time that it has charged today is briefly on the drive to pick up Jacob from daycare and back, because I have the wireless charger in the Jeep that I put it in that cradle. But that's, maybe 25 minutes combined of charging over the course of the day. So, yeah, all that to say that battery life has been drastically better than at least what I remember, 4 or 5 iterations back, where I would have to plug in halfway through the day just to make it through the rest of the day. And I know the original iPad Pro that I have, the 9.7 inch, can last most of the day just always on doing something without having to plug it in. It'll be pretty close to dead by the time I do plug it in. But I mean, that you're still talking 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know exactly when it was released at this point, but it's antiquated management at this point. And so the big comparison to be drawn from those is that, in the Intel MacBook Pro, I still have to plug in repeatedly every 2 or 3 hours because of, processor usage with something as stupid as a Chrome-based browser.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, my iPhone XS is down to 12%, but I realize I use it since we've been working from home. I actually use it more because I end up working. The amount of work that I do in a day, I spread it out longer I spread it throughout the day more. And so I use my phone to join meetings more than I used to. And so joining a meeting for like several hours, various meetings for several hours of the day and not getting juiced up any, I feel like that's so good. My battery management has gotten so good, and I can't wait to see what they do with portable computers. I think it's going to be really cool.
I do think the other thing that has contributed to at least less of an issue for me, wireless charging just makes it convenient to be able to put the phone down for 5-10 minutes in between meetings or use or whatever. And it's surprising, even though it's significantly slower than plugging it in, it's surprising how much that can change battery or power capacity over the course of a day.
Yeah. When we worked at work, I would have a Qi charger on my desk, and I'd leave it on there, one, so I could glance at it if, I got a message. But a lot of it had to do with, for that reason, and I would charge it during the workday so that at the end of the workday, I'd have 100% battery, and that would last me well through the night. So no matter what I was doing for the rest of the night, I didn't have to worry about my battery, and I wouldn't charge overnight like I used to. And so wireless charging was kind of a game changer for me.
I will say that does mean it's the one thing that I'm not looking forward to with the introduction of MagSafe is that I know me, I'm going to feel like I have to replace all of my wireless chargers with updated MagSafe compatible chargers.
Wait, I must have missed that. I thought, is the Qi charging standard not a part of the iPhone 12?
No, it is. It's just I know me, like my personal thing. Yeah.
Oh, you want it. You want it. Okay.
Well, and if you use the new MagSafe charging, it's higher wattage than what Qi charging currently provides, and I don't remember what they call it, the high capacity or whatever.
It's 15 watts, I think.
For the MagSafe standard. If you look, the Qi standard, I think it's still listed at 7.5 watts.
That's max you can get out of the Qi?
I think so. I know I saw reference to 7.5 somewhere. I'm not just completely pulling that out of the air, but I don't know for sure if that's top max or if that was in relation to maybe what the 11 Pro could do.
I mean, I have got mine connected to a 5-watt adapter, so I'm not going to get anything more than 5 watts. So, but for the use case of my wireless charging, it doesn't change my world. I think I would probably pick up a MagSafe charger just because, I don't know, I'm actually more interested in the other MagSafe features. I'm more interested in the case than the actual charger.
So something that I completely missed the first time I watched the event, and I'm going to blame work interrupting me for that. But Apple is reintroducing a dual device charger that utilizes MagSafe for the phone and the watch that folds in half.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I'm curious about that one, mostly because I have both devices anyway, and so it'd be kind of nice to have one charging mat that would handle both without a problem. But I'm also curious if it means there's any improvement to charging the watch via that, or if it's just same old as far as the watch is concerned, and the introduction of MagSafe for the other portion of that device.
Yeah, I haven't looked a lot into what that entails, but I did see the picture, and because I don't have an Apple Watch and I'm still undecided about the Apple Watch, it doesn't benefit me that much because I wouldn't want to have it and not have a watch. Like if I had a watch, I would that's something I would consider. But not having a watch, it's not something I'll consider because half of it's is going to be unusable.
Yeah, so my current setup at the moment is a 12 South stand, which I extremely highly recommend. But for the watch, you put the little charging disc in the middle, and it sets it up nice, like the Hi-Rise did for the phone. And then because I haven't seen a 12 South compatible wireless charger, which granted I also haven't looked since buying mine, but I have an Anker, the one that you just set the phone on that has it standing up, that I know you're familiar with because it's same style that you were using.
Yeah, that's what I had on my desk at work.
And so I have those two side by side on the nightstand, and then I have one of the disc Mophie chargers for those times where I need to have the work phone also available charging on the nightstand, or if I need to charge the AirPods Pro or whatever. It gives me an extra charging station. And so I've got 3 separate physical devices, and I'm really interested in being able to merge all of that into one.
Yeah, that would be really cool. I was really interested in AirPower when that was going to be a thing, or before they killed it, or before they couldn't do it. I thought that would have been really cool because it was just this one very simple piece, plugs in. You set your phone on it, you set your headphones on it, your headphone case on it, wherever, and you set your watch on it. You set any of those devices. You set 2 phones on it. However you're gonna, whatever you're planning to put on it, you just set them there and they're good to go. And I thought that was nice. It was sleek. I love the pictures. I kind of wish they, it would have been okay if they would just came out with a 3-zoned mat like that to charge on. That's not what I was going to do. But it is nice to see that they haven't given up on that. There's at least 2 wireless chargers for the iPhone now that are made by Apple.
Yeah, I also didn't realize how intrigued I would be by the one that I was talking about for the watch and the phone, the fact that it folds up and it's easily transportable. I don't know why I find that fascinating since I'm not traveling anywhere at this point, but I don't know, I think I just like the appeal of being able to relocate it or travel with it whenever the time comes that we do travel again.
Yeah, I think it's a very, travel is romantic, and being able to do something convenient like that, because you're going to have your watch, you're going to have your phone. Being able to just pack something up into your bag like that and set it down on a bedside table in a hotel room, it's nice. It's really nice.
So we've gone off on a couple of relatively long tangents around specific subsets of features. Let's back up a little bit more to the overall event and what was announced. Did you feel satisfied with the year-over-year iterations of the iPhone?
You know, I do, and we haven't even talked about the processor. I feel like at this point, the processors Apple used, they're just going to keep getting faster and faster and faster. That it was good, but it felt like business as usual, which is like a good business. You know, it was a good report. So I feel like that was expected. I thought I'd be disappointed that there weren't any other products announced, like Apple Studio headphones or something like that. But I'm kind of okay with all of that. I feel pretty satisfied with the just barely making it over an hour for this launch.
So I have two kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say they're big complaints, but I have two complaints. And neither one of them should take away from the fact that I walked away from the event feeling pretty satisfied with what was presented. So it's almost like being nitpicky, but I'll explain. My first complaint is that there was no Apple TV update. And it's not so much that it needs it, because the Apple TV, the 4K iteration, certainly handles everything I need it to do. But I see a significant room for improvement. The problem is that most of the room for improvement that I see is not based in hardware. So it's not so much that I felt like they needed to introduce a new Apple TV, but I would have really liked to have seen some phenomenal improvements on integration with external devices. And by that, I'll give the specific example that I have in mind. My Apple TV goes to a Yamaha receiver connected via HDMI, and then from that receiver to an LG 4K TV. And the receiver does full 4K pass-through, and for some reason, every time I turn on the TV and the receiver, I have to reboot that fucking Apple TV in order for it to control volume over HDMI. And I don't understand why, and it pisses me off every day. So something just to introduce less friction with the ability to control other devices via HDMI, since this is supposedly a standard that's been in place for years now, would be nice. But that's kind of nitpicky, because it's a very specific use case, and realistically, I'm sure most people don't encounter that problem. I want to think it's a problem with the implementation on the receiver versus something on Apple's side, but I don't know. I haven't taken the time to try to figure it out.
So this has been talked about before, and I don't remember what the standard quote-unquote is. But this is, you are not alone, and the feeling I get, so my wet finger in the air, is that most people have this problem, to the extent that the feature of controlling various devices through this HDMI standard is finicky. And some people will have it working for X amount of time, and then for no apparent reason or obvious reason, it stops working. And I don't think it's Apple's implementation. I don't know that it's Yamaha's implementation. The wet finger I have in the air leads me to believe that even though there's a standard, not everybody's on the same page, or enough of it is buggy, or even the standard could be buggy that it just doesn't work the way you would expect. If you had an Apple television set and an Apple receiver and an Apple TV set-top box, it feels like you wouldn't have any of those things if you had the other things. But I feel like it would be less of a problem because it would be that standard would be, I guess you could say, something comparable is Wi-Fi routers and base stations. Before we were doing, mesh networks, Apple had a great implementation of using multiple routers as repeaters and having a single base station that was connected to your internet connection out to the world and extending that internal Wi-Fi network with additional routers. They had a great implementation, and if you tried to do the same thing with a different brand access point, it was kind of difficult to do, at least with consumer grade equipment.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. I think the main reason I've become so angry about it recently is it did not happen daily prior to tvOS 13. And so we're talking about a year now of it being every day I have to restart the Apple TV, and then suddenly it magically knows, hey, I can control these things again. And tvOS 14 did nothing to improve that.
Yeah, I understand your frustration. I was going to say, I do think we need new Apple TV models. I don't think they need to be any more powerful than they are, because the market has gone in a direction where the 4-year-old Apple TV is fairly well overpowered. What I think is missing from the Apple lineup is a stick. And it seems like that is not something that Apple would do, but that's where the market has gone, and Apple in some cases is chasing the market, and I feel like a stick is missing. I would love to have an inexpensive stick, because the Apple TV, it's a 4-year-old device. Even though it does everything that it should do today, it just feels bad or uncomfortable to buy a 4-year-old device, because it feels like the next one is looming. And so I think it would be really nice to see a much less expensive stick that you plug into your HDMI port. And if they can do it so that you don't have to plug anything else in for more power, it's like most of the Rokus you have to plug in USB for additional power. I think that would be a nice addition to the Apple TV lineup, and a better remote.
Yeah, the remote. I don't know. I'm not a hater on the remote like a lot of people. I don't love it either. I think there's significant room for improvement in a number of ways. But I will say I've grown pretty well accustomed to the remote at this point, where it just doesn't bother me as long as I put it back in the specific place that I keep it, so that it doesn't get lost amid blanket or cushions.
So I've been a Roku user for I think about 7 years, and I really like the Roku remote. It's about the same size as the Apple TV remote. It's a little bit thicker. It's more rounded. It fits in the hand better, and the buttons are really easy to find. And I like that. And I was a Roku user because Apple TV didn't have support for Plex for a long time. And so even though Roku is kind of bastard in the marketplace there, I still really like it. It's disappointing that there's no HBO Max for Roku. It's just the old HBO application. It's weird to me. I can get Apple TV on a Roku, but I can't get HBO Max. And Apple typically is the most exclusive with things like that.
Yeah, the only reason I was able to be comfortable with an Apple TV is because at the time I was still using a Mac Mini as my head unit connected to the receiver, and the primary method of consuming content in general, and so Plex was running on it. And then it wasn't until Plex was available on the Apple TV that the Mac Mini became relegated to being a server, and eventually decommissioned and then replaced with a new Mac Mini earlier this year. But even now, it is headless. It doesn't serve any purposes for entertainment consumption. That is all done through the Apple TV now.
Yeah, so at the time, I wanted to do a headless Mac Mini for that, but I had young children at home, and I was at work, and my ex-wife was at home with the young children, so I needed something that allowed them to play videos without any troubles, and that was not going to be the case with the headless Mac Mini.
Oh, for sure. I wouldn't have recommended it for anybody other than my use case in general.
You gotta be okay with having to use remote desktop every once in a while. We're trying to bring back Front Row. Front Row, the pre-Apple TV. It was good.
It was. There are times where I miss its simplicity, just like there are times when I miss the old interface for Plex that was more reminiscent of the front row simplicity. I don't know. There are a lot of trade-offs. That's easily a whole nother topic that we could devolve into an hour of discussion around.
Yeah. I might put in the topic list the heading, why my Plex interface is all fucked up. It's trying to connect to versions of the Mac Mini that don't exist anymore, that I've deleted, and I can't get rid of them. But that's it's a different topic.
Yeah, it is interesting though that I don't have that problem. But yeah, we'll add that as a topic because I think it'd be interesting to see the differences in our setups too.
Mm-hmm.
So I know I said I had 2 complaints, and I'm trying to remember what my other complaint was. I mean, I'm drawing a blank, and it's because neither of them were very significant anyway. The Apple TV thing is just a very painful rant lately. There's no reason that Apple needs to release a new device to solve my problem. But I cannot, for the life of me, remember what the other complaint I had was, which I guess means it wasn't much of a complaint.
I'm going to put out there, I don't know if you've been to the Apple website, but if you look at the iPhone 12, which I think this is the first time they put an OLED display in the lower model.
Yes.
I don't think the iPhone 11, I think it had like a really nice LCD display, but now the iPhone 12 has an LED display. But in the, if you go to apple.com/iPhone and you scroll down to the iPhone 12, it shows a picture of the 5 different colors, with circled backgrounds on it. I really love how they have that arranged on the screen. It looks really cool.
Something else that I noticed in relation to the colors, I'm not normally a big fan of red. I don't have anything specifically against it, but it's just never caught my eye as something that looks good. Where the product red version of the 12 caught my eye as being something that I could have conceivably seen myself going with.
It's those flat edges, man. That's what it is.
As soon as they showed the first picture of the 12 with the flat edges, it's like, yeah, nope, I'm in, done. I don't care about anything else. You could give me the exact same phone as last year with those flat edges, and I would be first in line.
Yeah, it was the iPhone 4. I feel like was the first massive upgrade to the iPhone. It was the first massive, I'm thinking about the specs. It was the first massive upgrade to the iPhone. That was the first camera phone that was like really good. I think I want to clarify, like the iPhone 3GS had a good camera for still, but not for video. And the iPhone 4 was the first camera phone that was good for picture and video. It was doing 720p for video, and that was kind of like the beginning for me to like use my iPhone to start recording lots of video. And then, it also had the square edges, and it was the first one with a Retina display. And I just remember seeing the display, and I was like, wow. I remember seeing the original iPhone, Gen 1, thinking, I didn't know you could make a display look that good. And then just a few years later, 3 years later, iPhone 4 comes out with a Retina display, and I was like, this is really cool. This needs to be, all displays need to be this good. So
I completely agree. I will say what caught my eye on the first gen iPhone more than the display was just how good a touchscreen could be.
Yes.
I mean, prior to that, every touchscreen I had used was usable, and that's being generous. Whereas the first iteration iPhone, the touchscreen was it was flawless. It was an input method that felt natural, in a style that had not been able to create an input method that felt natural prior.
At the time the first iPhone came out, it was announced in January of 2007 and released in June of 2007. Prior to that, a physical keyboard on a device is what made sense. The BlackBerry made sense. And then the iPhone is released, and it's like, oh. And, Steve Jobs was, specifically saying, we can change the keyboard anytime we want. And that has proven to be such a good, it's changed the entire industry. That idea definitely stuck. Now I think you're hard pressed to find a phone with a physical keyboard. And so Apple brought the touchscreen to the mainstream.
Yes. I was going to say something else there, but I remembered my other complaint, and so I want to jump back to that.
Oh, yeah.
One previous time, and I don't remember specifically which models anymore, but the difference in the camera systems between the Max and the non-Max Pro version. Previously it was just the top of the line versus the non-top of the line as far as price was concerned. It was not a Pro moniker. And so it seems like it was in the realm of the 6S. I don't remember for sure, so I may look it up, I may not. But I really despise the difference in Pro models other than size when you don't have that disparity in models outside of the Pro models. And this is nitpicky because I really think the only reason the Max got the better image sensor for the camera is because they physically had space to do it, and they just could not fit it into the non-Max model. But I really hate when there's a feature that I really would like to have, and I absolutely refuse to go with a Max size device.
Yeah, I believe it was when the 6 and the 6 Plus came out. I think that was the first one where the 6 Plus had a slightly better camera. So before that, there was only one iPhone. You had one new iPhone. I'm sorry. Yeah, the 5.
No, that was correct.
No, the 5. I think we are forgetting the short-lived 5C. The 5S came out, and the 5C came out with it, and the 5S had a better camera.
See, I never considered the 5C because it was obviously geared toward the lower price tier anyway.
Well, it wasn't the same phone as the 5S.
Right. It was the previous generation's CPU with... It was kind of like the previous iteration of the SE. It was somewhat modern, not as modern as the newest device.
Yes, but so the 6 and the 6 Plus, you got different camera sensors, and it had to do with physics. It's been fairly consistent that it has to do with physical space in the device for just a little bit more camera, because those camera modules are so small. So
yeah, and that was the year that I decided to try a Plus, and that is the only phone in the history of all of the different phones that I have owned that I dropped all the damn time.
So we've already said that you've settled on the Pacific Blue 256, not the Max.
Correct. I just cannot go with that large of a device. The way I hold it and use it, it ends up being very top heavy, and I'm very prone to it slipping out of my grasp and tumbling over out of the upper side of my hand.
I look at the difference in those specs, and I'm like, because it's not all the lenses on the Max versus the Pro versus the Pro Max, but I don't think I will notice it. So it's not been a problem for me, or it's not been a dilemma.
So I went back and looked because this was going to very strongly influence my decision. And when I realized it was only the difference on the ultra wide lens, correct?
There's a optical zoom difference on the telephoto lens.
Yeah, I don't really care about that piece. I don't use the zoom features at all on the phone, other than changing between the lenses. The part that I really wanted access to was the larger image sensor and the different type of image stabilization. Mm-hmm. And then I went back and looked, and it was not on the telephoto lens or they call it wide, I think, but the normal lens. It was only on the ultra wide, if I remember correctly. And that pretty much meant that I'm not going to notice a difference in my normal shooting pattern.
Yeah, it was very minor. Like the optical zoom is different between the Pro and the Pro Max. I think the wide is it's either the wide or the ultra wide is exactly the same. It's very minor differences between the two. I remember looking at them side by side and thinking I will not. I remember looking at the specs side by side. I was like, I won't notice this.
Yeah, and I don't remember which page I found it on. It's one thing that's kind of convoluted about navigating the comparison screens that Apple's provided on the website and jumping through a couple of different hoops to get to that point. But I remember looking at it and thinking, oh, well, my normal use case doesn't use that lens that often. so I should compare to what I have, not what I think I might use. And comparing from the 11 Pro to the 12 Pro, it's like, yeah, that certainly makes sense, hands down. And I can just ignore the fact that the Max is in the lineup, and I'm good.
Yeah. Apple's spec page have gotten really, like, I'm having a hard time parsing certain information from their specs page. Because I remember finding one today and thinking one lens, and I don't remember if it's the wide or ultra wide, but it's one of the two, is exactly the same between Pro and the Pro Max. And then I knew the aperture on the telephoto was just barely different between the Pro and the Pro Max. And I felt like one of the wide zoom, and I can't remember which one it was, there was also something that was different. And it had to do with optical image stabilization. Pro Max has it and Pro does not. But I can't find that page anymore, mostly because I can't be bothered to look, or I can't casually look for it. But it's like earlier today, I was looking for what's in the box. Like, that used to be fairly prominent, and it took me a while to find the tech specs or the details that show what is going to come in the box. And I did finally find it.
You get the phone and a cable.
Yeah, well, but it's a new cable. You're getting it's now coming with a Lightning to USB-C cable.
Yeah, I mean, that's a relatively welcome change, except that I only have one power brick that uses USB-C. All the rest of them use USB-A.
Well, I've got a lot of Lightning to USB-A cables, and I have a lot of adapters that have a port for USB-A. So, like, I'm good to go there. Like, I don't really need more of that. I'm happy to be getting Lightning to USB-C cable. I was waiting to make sure that this new phone had Lightning before purchasing one, but now I feel like I don't have to purchase one, and I feel pretty good that they're not sending headphones anymore. I have at least 3 or 4 Apple earbuds that have never been uncoiled. So I welcome that change because it is good conservation. It's part of Apple being a good citizen to the ecosystem.
I agree. I'm not arguing against it. It's just one of those things that I think if they were going to make that change with the cable, the adapter would have been welcome for a year. Because how many people have a stockpile of places they can plug in USB-C cables?
I think that's another thing. I think people are okay buying the adapter. The people that want the adapter, they're okay buying the adapter, and a lot of people are going to be okay just connecting it to their computer and charging it on their computer. It's the folks that buy the new phone and don't have the computer connected to might. I don't know. I feel like if my mom got a new phone, she would have to replace all of her adapters or have at least one adapter, because I'd venture to guess there's nothing in her house that is USB-C.
Yeah, I feel like that's more typical than what we'd think of. I of course have 2 different laptops that have multiple USB-C ports, and I have a couple of different related dongles that give me USB-C and USB-A without a problem. Like, I'm not hurting for places where I could plug in a cable. I'm also the type of person that I'm just going to buy an Anker brick that gives me USB-C and USB-A and call it a day, because it's a lot easier to have that one device that I plug in, the 3 or 4 different cables that I need to worry about. But I don't think that's the typical user. I think the typical user is someone who might have a newer computer with USB-C, but more than likely they upgrade their phone far more often than they upgrade their computer. And the computer is not their primary method of accessing information or things in general. And so I do wonder if not including a brick when you change the cable to be USB-C to Lightning is a little bit premature, but at the same time, it doesn't affect me. I really don't care. It just feels like another year of having a brick to get those out in the wild might have been a better decision, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I hear that, but at least we have Apple stores are open, full of employees that will make sure that everyone has the right charging accessories.
Yeah, and as I say that, I also wonder how many people even plug in to charge anymore. With wireless charging coming to the lineup, a couple of years ago, if anybody is like me and immediately jumped on the fact that I don't have to worry about fumbling or finding a cable, that might be the majority of users, and that might be why it makes sense now.
It does. I know. Like, I can think of a friend of mine that I would consider normal people, and in their kitchen, they have a little Samsung wireless Qi charging stand. And my friend's wife has been an Android user, and he's been an iPhone user. And I remember telling him one day, "Hey, you can use that now," and he's like, "Great!" And so, you just stick your phone on it. That I feel like that is going to become the norm. You just have a stand, you stick your phone on, and it doesn't matter whether you have an iPhone or an Android phone. They're all using the same wireless charging standard.
It'd be nice to see an iteration of MagSafe using that same wireless charging in the upcoming Apple Silicon.
Mm-hmm. That would be cool. Then we'd have MagSafe on computers again.
It might be a reason to get rid of my current computer lineup and start over.
I mean, isn't there always a reason?
Well, yeah. I've been watching the Apple Silicon developments for a while because there are a number of things that it could very, very significantly improve about my life day to day. And there are a number of things that could very significantly impact in a negative direction day to day. So I'm curious. I'm cautiously optimistic at how well Apple is going to transition based on how well they did from PowerPC to Intel, and just knowing what Apple can do with its own chips based on what we've seen over multiple iterations in the iPad and the iPhone.
Yeah. I'm about 2 years into, or 2/3 of the way into the length of time that work provides us with a computer. I guess after 3 years, it's hey, you can request a new computer, and I'm hoping that in the next year and 2 months, the MacBook Pro with Apple Silicon in it will be out, and the software is ready to go, so that I can make a seamless transition and do it on the work device first.
Yeah, it'd be nice to try it there first. That's what I know. That's what led me to replace my aging MacBook Pro with a newer model with the USB-C ports all the way around. It was just getting the newer model for work and finding that I didn't hate it as much as I thought I might. Which just goes back to not creating preconceived judgments based on change. But that, again, that we can make an entire show out of that.
Yeah.
And but it did. I'm glad that it brought me to a point where I have more modern laptops, both for work and for home. I am curious, though, how much I'm going to want whatever replaces it when there is an Apple Silicon-based derivative. And so I don't know. Like, my thought would not be that the MacBook Pro is the first Apple Silicon-based computer for a number of different reasons, but I don't expect that.
Neither do I.
And so I feel like I have another year to wait and see what the replacement's going to be, and I don't feel like I'm going to need to replace my computer over the course of that time. Like I feel like I have a more than capable computer to watch what happens and see the transition and be able to just make that next change when I feel I need to, which is a nice position to be in. It's not like I'm still using the 4 or 5 year old device and feeling like I need to make a change, but I really don't want to yet, not knowing what's upcoming. I like being in this position better.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like when I got this computer, it feels, I got it just a few months after it was released by Apple, and I feel like it is at least 5-year device. It's provided nothing goes wrong as far as compute power goes. I think it's a 5-year device.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned 5 years. That tends to be roughly exactly when I've replaced each of mine, with the only exception being when I got a significant discount for working at Apple.
Yeah. The best plan that I heard, and I really wish that I'd done this or thought of. I wish I was clever enough to think of this, but one of the best uses of that discount was somebody buy the top of the line Mac Pro, buy the 15-inch, max it out all the way, get the 25% discount, and sell it after a year and do it again. And every time that 25% discount was available, buy a new one, sell the old one. Ended up buying one, and then that covered him until he left Apple. Like he was always able to buy a new computer with the proceeds that he got, or the money he made from selling the 1-year-old computer. So he essentially had a computer that was covered by AppleCare the entire time that he had a computer, or the entire time that he worked at Apple, and never paid for AppleCare.
Yeah, I believe it. Going back and looking at what I thought was a reasonable purchase price was horrifically skewed because of what I could get a device for a while there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go back to what I was paying prior to that, and it's been on par, really, pre and post my time at Apple. So
I feel like there's a slight premium for the MacBook Pro now because the touch bar, and that is, I feel like, a little bit unlucky because sadly developers haven't made better use of the touch bar. I thought it was a bad idea to begin with, or gimmicky to begin with, but I found a use case for it that I loved, and not enough people take advantage of it. And it's just misunderstood. It's either ahead of its time or misunderstood in its time, or maybe it's just not good.
It's one of those things that I think we'll get our answer with the next iteration of Apple devices, if they continue to include it with the Apple Silicon Macs and provide some guidance on how to use it in a way that's not just virtual buttons. Like if they show something even better that they've done first party, I think that'll be what sparks the transition in thinking of it as a viable device. I'm searching for the word because I don't think that's quite accurate. I think the problem is that developers haven't come up with a way to leverage it because they haven't thought of something that makes it useful more than just another display. And why would you display it there if you could display it on the screen? And I really think it's more a matter of someone hasn't come up with the idea of how to leverage it in a way that sparks that creative interest from developers en masse. And so I think Apple bears the burden of providing that spark if they see it being a technology that sticks around.
I think so too. And really, I can only think of one use case. I can only think of one use case that I really find compelling, and not really any others. And that is the integration with iPhone. So when somebody calls me, if I'm like, this was great when we were working in the office. It still works now. But if I have my headphones in, I'm working on my computer, and somebody calls me, I can answer from my computer. I don't have to take my headphones out. What I'm listening to is paused. I have, no matter what applications I'm switching back and forth to here and there on my computer, I always have my phone controls there. I can mute, I can unmute, and that was kind of perfect. And so I love that. I wish when using Chrome or Google Meet, they had that feature set built into that. I know somebody sort of hacked it 4 years ago, or came up with a solution 4 years ago that was never maintained. So I don't have that for using Google Meet for work, but I love that feature when somebody calls. I can't think of another use case that is as good as that for any other software. That alone made me into a very enthusiastic touch bar user.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I was thinking about it as you were talking about it. I've actually changed the touch bar on my work laptop to be the static, just control strip.
Yeah.
I probably ought to change it back to the dynamic, application aware implementation, whatever, just to see, because I honestly, I don't use it. I use it to adjust, or to mute and to unmute and to lock the screen, and that's it.
Yeah. If you take any number of work calls, it's really nice for how I just described it. It's so simple to be able to do that, but I don't know, it's one of those simple things that is surprisingly very satisfying.
I think part of the issue there too for me is almost all of my calls come via Google Meet. Like I never have anybody call the work phone. They're always either reaching out via IM or Hangout/Meet chat.
Yeah, I used to use my work phone to join the Google Meets on the phone, but there's so much more. I stopped doing that a while ago, and I connect through the web interface because it's better. It's just, and even though I love what I got from the touch bar, and it's missing when I connect the web interface, and I've been every once in a while I'll get real interested in finding a solution to it, and keep finding the same solution that is broken and no longer supported. It is still a really good feature, but if nobody's calling your work phone, nobody dialing that number, then it's not something you'll be able to appreciate. Not with Google Meet. I think Zoom supports it though. Zoom does support the touch bar.
That wouldn't surprise me. They certainly are more aggressive from a development perspective than Google is with its offerings.
Well, I think part of it is Google doesn't want to make it would be a problem if they make their service better on somebody else's device, because they do make Chromebook, they do make an Android phone, and if they make a Google experience slightly better on a Mac Pro, then I feel like it's irresponsible of their time.
I would agree, except that you're going to reach a point where the competition makes the experience compelling to move away from your devices if you don't start to leverage the technologies available.
That's true. They have, I think there'd be if there was more enthusiasm in the entire market for a touch bar, to the point where other computer manufacturers are thinking, oh, we need a touch bar, we need a touch bar equivalent, then it is in Google's best interest to support the touch bar and the other touch bar equivalents. But because I feel like it's still niche even in the app community, they're okay not developing and not providing the feature set. Whereas Zoom is like, we want to be the best everywhere because all we do is this application. It's not outside of their feature set to do that. They've got to be as good as Apple is with what is comparable with Apple.
That's a pretty fair assessment. We're closing in on a couple of hours. Do you have any final thoughts on the Apple event or the iPhone in general?
I think that's everything that I thought. I might have new thoughts in a week. I thought there was they seem a lot more enthusiastic about 5G than I expected them to be. And I'm just like, what you're telling me sounds good, but I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned this to Emily when we were rewatching a couple of pieces of the event before we record. I don't care about 5G at all because I'm in a state that the likelihood of it being widespread, or likelihood of it seeing widespread adoption in our area just seems ridiculously low. And so I pulled up the coverage map from Verizon and was surprised to find out that 5G is actually available in a decent-sized area. It's the ultra-wideband 5G that is not. And so part of me wonders about the differences between 5G, quote-unquote, and the ultra-wideband 5G implementation, and how much of that, how much of what I might see in my day-to-day will be improved with 5G versus the ultra-wideband derivative. I just don't know enough about the technology to even comment about it.
I haven't felt like I needed more speed from cellular data. I'll always welcome it, but I haven't felt the need for it. I feel like going from 3G to LTE was very welcome, but it took a while to get there. And I really haven't been thinking, oh, I wish this page would load faster. Usually when I'm thinking a page needs to load faster, it really has more to do with signal strength than actual quality of the network. So again, what they're saying sounds great. I hope I can see those kind of benefits. I'm not really expecting them for a few years based on where we live.
Yeah, I think I would have been far more excited about it if this was coming prior to our European trip, because one of the things that was quite apparent while we were in London and in Dublin was that connecting to carriers there and being able to get information and directions and trying to navigate the city was challenging if you were relying on your connection to the carrier and the phone and not having a clue where you were going elsewhere.
All I can say is I wish I'd go to Europe.
I'm ready to go back. We'll just make a trip.
Yeah. Actually, I'd be happy to go to, most anywhere. I'd be happy to be able to just travel. And I suppose with that, we can button this up.
Yeah, I'm really ready to go back to Ireland. I know I mentioned it last week with the expatriation thing, but I so missed the calmness and serenity of being on that coastline at this point that I would be willing to risk any harm traveling if I could just get there and stay there.
Yeah, well, we haven't said anything political this whole podcast for over 2 hours, so we should end this.
That's not true.
We should end this on a political note. And right now, the American passport is garbage, can't go anywhere. It's probably too risky to go anywhere anyway for yourself and for other people. But I did see a Canadian describe what living in Canada is like, and it was amusing. I don't know, you might have seen this, but I don't remember which Canadian this was. It was one that I'd never heard of before. Just like I'm some American he's never heard of before and will likely never hear of. But the Canadian said, living here is kind of like living somewhere and your neighbor's car alarm is going off at 3 a.m. constantly. And then an American responded with, living here is like being locked in that car and not being able to get out.
Yeah, that's fairly apt at this point.
Yeah, we got 3 more. Oh yeah, we did start political. We said something about 3 weeks. So 3 weeks.
Well, and then the follow-up was, clarifying the quote about politics.
Yeah, that wasn't political at all. That was just a quote. It was a quote.
We started and wrapped with some political discourse.
Yes, we had political bread and iPhone in the middle. Actually, Apple in the middle.
All right. Well, is there anything else you want to add before we button it up?
Nope, I've added too much already.
All right. Well, in that case, I think that's a wrap.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Have a good night.
You as well.
As always, you can reach us on Twitter at untitled_hosts with an S. We also have an Instagram account with the same name at untitled_hosts. You can send us an email at untitled.hosts@gmail.com. And you can visit the feed directly at theuntitledpodcast.com. Have a good night.